This is Statistics Part 1, which includes measures of central tendency and box and whisker plots. Measures of central tendency is talking about the middle of the data, or the average. So you've seen all of these before, but the mean or average of a data set is denoted by X bar. That's how we read that. X bar. For the data set, and this just is saying, the first data point, the second point, so on and so forth until you get to the last data point. So what it's saying is all we do is add up all the data and then divide by the number of data points that you have. The median is the middle number. So when the values are written in numerical order, if the data set has an even number of values, then the median is the average of those two middle numbers. Otherwise, it's just the exact middle. And then the mode is the one that occurs most frequently. So there can be one mode, no mode, or more than one mode, just depending on your data set. Okay, so the other thing we're looking at in this section is box and whisker plots. So it's just another way to organize or display your data. So the parts of a box and whisker plot include the lower extreme, the lower quartile, the median, the upper quartile, and the upper extreme. Alright, so the lower extreme is just the minimum value, so the lowest value in the data set. And then the upper extreme is just the maximum value, or the highest value in the data set. And then these are what might be new, but the lower quartile is going to be the median of the lower half, and the upper quartile is the median of the upper half. So in other words, you look at this half of data and you find the median, and that's your lower quartile. And then you look at the other half of the data and find the median, and that's the upper quartile. So a box and whisker plot always has 5 parts to it. Okay, so we can make a box and whisker plot. And in order to do that, we need to find the median, the lower quartile, the minimum, the maximum, the upper quartile. So the first thing we need to do is rewrite this data in order from least to greatest. Okay, so now my data is in order from least to greatest. And as I did it, I just sort of marked everything out so I didn't repeat anything. So now I'm going to look for the median. So in this case I have an even number of data points. So I'm actually going to have to find the average of the two middle points. So 27 and 30. So the first 6 and then the second 6. Right, so I'm going to have to find the average of 27 and 30. So 27 plus 30 divided by 2. So that's going to be 28.5. So that's my median value. Alright, my minimum or my lower extreme is going to be 15. My maximum or upper extreme is going to be 45. And then I still have to find the lower quartile and the upper quartile. So the lower quartile is going to be the median of the lower half. So the average of 23 and 25 is going to be 24. So that's our lower quartile. And the median of 30 and 30 is still just going to be 30. So that's our upper quartile, or the median of the upper half. So now I can draw my box and whisker plot because I have all 5 parts. Okay, so to do that, I need a number line, which I have down here. Alright, and I'm just going to plot it. You can either do it above or below. I have a little more space above. So, first thing I'm going to do is plot the median. So the median is at 28.5, so about right there. Okay, the minimum is at 15, that's going to be a dot. The maximum is going to be at 45, also a dot. The lower quartile is at 24. 24, which is about there, and the upper quartile is at 30. Okay, so now the median, the lower quartile, and the upper quartile are going to form a box. Alright, and then my whiskers, so box and whisker, my whiskers go to the minimum and the maximum. Alright, so that would be my box and whisker plot. Alright, so one thing that is useful about a box and whisker plot is that no matter what your data is, it's always going to be true that 25% of your data falls in each sort of chunk of the box and whisker plot. So from the minimum to the lower quartile, that's always going to be 25% of your data. From the lower quartile to the median, that's also going to be 25%. From the median to the upper quartile is another 25%, and from the upper quartile to the maximum is another 25%. So it doesn't matter what the box and whisker looks like. It could be super skewed. So it could look something like this, where you have like a tiny box, a giant whisker, and a short whisker. It's still going to be 25%, because it all has to do with how the box is constructed. So since this falls in the middle, and then this falls in the middle of the lower half, and this falls in the middle of the upper half, you're always going to split the data into 25% chunks. Okay, so we're going to keep that in mind. Alright, so more of what I'm going to ask you to do is going to be interpreting. So, for example, it says, what is the range of the test scores? So this box and whisker plot represents students' test scores, and it's telling me here that this is one class of 24 students total. So the range is going to be the maximum minus the minimum. So the range of scores is 46 points, because 96 minus 50 is 46 points. Alright, the interquartile range is just going to be the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. So 85 minus 66, which is going to be 19. Alright, and then what is the median of the test scores? Well, it's just right here at 75. Okay, so what percentage of students scored an 85 or above? So 85 is our upper quartile. So the thing you have to remember here is that 25% of the data is going to fall from the upper quartile to the maximum. So it's just 25%. Alright, and then what percentage of students scored between a 66 and an 85? So remember, each one of these boxes is 25%. So that's a total of 50% of the students scored between a 66 and an 85. And then number 6, how many students scored a 75 or higher? So notice that it's not asking what percentage, it's asking how many. Okay, so this is where you're going to have to kind of do more than one step. So 75 or higher, well, that's going to be 50%. But it's not asking percent, it's asking how many. So since it's a class of 24 students, 50% of that would be 12 students. Alright, so it's important that you realize the difference between the last ones that we did and these, where it's saying how many. So how many students scored less than a 66? Well, less than 66 is 25%. 25% of 24 is going to be 6. So 6 students scored less than a 66. Alright, and then last but not least, how many students scored between 50 and 66? And between 85 and 96. So that's where you have to remember. 25% falls between 50 and 66, and 25% falls between 85 and 96. So together, that's 50%. So that's still 12 of the students. Alright, and that is it for this section.